Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to jump in.
Well, today we're diving into something pretty interesting and maybe a bit unexpected.
Ooh, lay it on me.
It's all about cannabis and its connection to heart health.
Interesting. I'm definitely curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at the BudMed Bulletin Issue 5, Cannabis for the Heart. It's dated October 10th, 2024.
Okay, I'm familiar with that one. Some thought-provoking stuff in there.
Yeah, it really challenges some common assumptions about cannabis.
Absolutely. It seems like every day there's new research coming out that flips the script on what we thought we knew.
Exactly. Like one of the big concerns people have, and I know I did too, is that cannabis use could lead to heart attacks or strokes.
Right, that's a pretty common worry.
But get this. This bulletin cites a meta-analysis from Science Direct, and they found no direct link between cannabis use and those specific events.
That's interesting. A meta-analysis, though. That means they looked at data from a lot of different studies, right?
Yeah, a whole bunch of them. It wasn't just one small study, so that finding carries a lot of weight.
I see. So it's a pretty solid indication that cannabis itself might not be the culprit behind those heart issues.
Exactly. But there's a twist, and this is where things get really interesting. The bulletin points out that how you consume cannabis and how often could make a big difference.
Oh, okay. So are we talking smoking versus edibles, that sort of thing?
Exactly. They even use the example of coffee. Like, a little might be fine, but if you overdo it, you can have some negative effects.
That's a good analogy. Most things in life are about moderation, right?
Totally. And there's actually a study mentioned in the bulletin that found this really curious connection. They saw that regular monthly cannabis use wasn't linked to an increased risk of heart attacks.
Okay, so using it somewhat regularly seemed to be okay.
Yeah, but get this, they found that there was an increased risk among people who hadn't used cannabis recently.
Now that's interesting. Why would not using it be linked to a higher risk? It's almost like the opposite of what you'd expect.
I know, right? What does that tell us about how cannabis might be interacting with our bodies over time?
That's the real head scratcher. It suggests that maybe there's some kind of adaptation happening in the body when you use cannabis regularly.
Like our bodies get used to it, and then when we stop, things go a bit haywire.
It's a possibility. But it definitely shows that the relationship between cannabis and our cardiovascular systems is a lot more complicated than we initially thought.
For sure. And this is where things get even more mind-blowing. Buckle up, because several studies are showing that cannabis users who are admitted to the hospital for certain heart conditions actually fare better than non-users.
Wait, really? That's completely counterintuitive. It's like cannabis is somehow protecting them.
That's what it seems like. Like in one study, they looked at patients hospitalized for a heart attack, acute myocardial infarction.
Right.
And they found that the cannabis users were less likely to develop cardiogenic shock.
Okay, so for those who might not know, cardiogenic shock is a really serious complication where your heart can't pump enough blood. It's life-threatening.
Right, it's a big deal, and cannabis users were less likely to experience it during a heart attack.
Wow, so not only are they not having more heart attacks, but when they do have one, they're less likely to develop this serious complication.
Exactly, and it doesn't stop there. They were also less likely to need invasive procedures like angioplasty, which is a procedure to open blocked arteries in the heart.
So less risk of the initial event, less risk of complications. Sounds pretty amazing.
It really does. And the kicker, they had lower in-hospital mortality rates, meaning they were less likely to die from the heart attack while they were in the hospital.
That's incredible. And this wasn't just for heart attacks, right? You mentioned other heart conditions.
Totally. They found similar results in studies on people with heart failure. Cannabis users had shorter hospital stays, A&D, again, a lower risk of dying while in the hospital.
It's wild, isn't it? Cannabis is almost acting like some kind of heart guardian.
Right. It really makes you wonder why this is happening.
It's the big question researchers are trying to figure out. One theory is that it has to do with cannabis's anti-inflammatory properties.
Makes sense. We know that chronic inflammation is a major contributor to heart disease. So if cannabis can reduce inflammation, it could be protecting the heart in a big way.
Exactly. But it might not be the whole story. We also have to consider the endocannabinoid system, which is involved in regulating a lot of bodily functions, including cardiovascular activity.
Right, we touched on that earlier. So how does cannabis play into that system?
Well, certain cannabis compounds, like CBD and THC, can interact with this system. And some researchers believe that might be how cannabis improves blood flow regulates blood pressure, and even helps prevent irregular heartbeats.
So it's not just calming things down, it's actually fine-tuning how the heart functions.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
But we're still in the early stages of understanding all this. We need more research to be sure.
It's fascinating, though, isn't it?
Absolutely. It really opens up a whole new world of possibilities for how we think about cannabis and heart health.
And speaking of how we think about cannabis, there's a statement from the UK Public Health Advisory Council on the misuse of drugs that I found really striking. They actually compared the effects of cannabis on the heart and blood vessels to moderate exercise.
Wow, that's quite a statement.
Right. They essentially said that for healthy adults and adolescents, moderate cannabis use doesn't seem to pose a risk to the heart.
It's almost like they're saying cannabis is as good for your heart as a workout.
Yeah.
And this is a major public health body saying this.
I know. It really highlights how much our understanding of cannabis is changing.
It seems like we're finally starting to look beyond the stigma and see cannabis for what it is. A complex substance with both potential risks and benefits.
Exactly. And that's something we need to be talking about more openly and honestly. But that's a conversation for another deep dive.
Agreed. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
For sure. We'll be back with more on this fascinating topic in part 2 of our deep dive into cannabis and cardiovascular health. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone, to our deep dive on cannabis and heart health.
It's wild to think just how much we're still learning about this plant.
Right. Like in the last part, we were talking about how cannabis users admitted to the hospital for heart issues often have better outcomes than non-users.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So what's the thinking behind that? Why would cannabis potentially be giving them an edge?
Well, one of the big theories revolves around inflammation. You know, chronic inflammation is a huge factor in heart disease.
Yeah, it's like a slow burn that damages the heart over time.
Exactly. And cannabis, we know, has strong anti-inflammatory properties.
So maybe it's calming down that inflammation and helping the heart heal and function better.
That's a great way to put it. But it's not the only possible explanation.
Oh, what else could be going on?
Remember the endocannabinoid system we talked about? It helps regulate all sorts of things in the body, including cardiovascular function.
Okay, yeah, that rings a bell. Refresh my memory, though. How does cannabis fit into that system?
So cannabis has these compounds, cannabinoids like CBD and THC, that can actually interact with the endocannabinoid system.
I see.
And by doing that, they can potentially improve blood flow, regulate blood pressure, even protect against arrhythmias, those irregular heartbeats.
So it's not just about reducing inflammation. It might be actively helping the heart work better.
Exactly. But of course, we still need more research to really confirm all of this.
Yeah, it's all still pretty new, isn't it?
It is, but it's exciting to see where it all leads.
Definitely. Now, the bulletin also mentions that how you consume cannabis can impact its effects on the heart.
Oh, right. That makes sense.
Like smoking, for example.
Yeah, with smoking, you're getting all those harmful combustion products into your system.
And those can damage blood vessels and increase the risk of heart problems, even if cannabis itself might have some benefits.
It's like taking one step forward and two steps back.
Right. So the bulletin recommends choosing smoke-free methods like vaping, edibles, or tinctures.
Yeah, that way you're getting the potential benefits without the added risks of smoking.
And of course, dosage and frequency matter too, right?
Absolutely. Moderation is key with just about everything, and cannabis is no exception.
It's like the Goldilocks principle, not too much, not too little, find that sweet spot.
Exactly. And that's another reason why it's so important to talk to your doctor if you're considering using cannabis, especially for health reasons.
They can help you figure out the right approach, make sure it's safe for you, and all that.
It's all about personalized care, right? Everyone's body is different.
Totally. So even though there's more and more evidence suggesting cannabis can be good for the heart, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Right. It's about being informed, making smart choices, and working with your healthcare provider.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's amazing, though, to think how much our understanding of cannabis has shifted in recent years.
It really is a paradigm shift.
Oh, and there's still so much more to discover, so much more to learn.
For sure. This is just the beginning of a very exciting journey.
Well, folks, we're about to head into the final part of our deep dive.
Well, can't wait.
We're going to be talking about the broader implications of these findings and looking ahead at what the future might hold for cannabis in the world of heart health. So stick around. All right, we're back for the final part of our cannabis and heart health deep dive.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It really has. We've learned so much, and it's challenged a lot of what I thought I knew about cannabis.
Same here. It's incredible how much research is emerging in this field.
Well, let's look ahead now. What does all this mean for the future of heart health? Could cannabis actually become a tool in our fight against heart disease?
I think that's a very real possibility, especially as research continues to uncover its potential benefits.
It's mind-blowing to think about, right? This plant that's been demonized for so long could actually help us live longer, healthier lives.
It's a real paradigm shift. Imagine a future where doctors are prescribing cannabis-based therapies alongside traditional medications for things like heart failure or arrhythmias.
Or even as a preventative measure for people at high risk of heart disease.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Of course, we need more research to really nail down those applications, figure out the ideal dosages and all that.
Right, we need to be responsible and make sure everything's backed by solid science.
Absolutely.
Right.
But the potential is definitely there.
I keep thinking back to that statement from the UK Public Health Advisory Council comparing cannabis to moderate exercise. It really makes you question everything we've been told about cannabis, you know?
It's a powerful statement for sure. And it shows that the conversation around cannabis is finally starting to shift.
It's not just about the risks anymore. We're starting to acknowledge the potential benefits too.
And I think that's crucial. Just like with anything else, it's about education, responsible use, and making informed decisions.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways you hope our listeners walk away with?
Well, first and foremost, that the connection between cannabis and heart health is complex and multifaceted. We can't just lump it into good or bad categories.
It's about looking at the nuances, the individual factors, and the latest research.
Right. And always, always consult with healthcare professionals before making any decisions about using cannabis, especially for medical reasons.
Couldn't agree more. Your doctor can help you weigh the potential benefits and risks and guide you towards the best approach for you.
And always remember, everyone's body is different. What works for one person might not work for another.
It's all about personalized care.
Exactly. So keep those things in mind as you continue to learn and explore this fascinating world of cannabis and its potential impact on health.
That's a great note to end on. This has been an incredible deep dive, and I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. It's been a pleasure diving in with you.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a whole new topic, so stay tuned.